I always say like the root of addiction comes from trauma. I would go from one crazy situation to the next because all I'd known my whole life was chaos. Finally come forward and I finally say something and I'm not believed. So what did I do? I just like closed down, you know?
Your father didn't believe you?
I was somewhat detached from reality. I had these different characters I played in this like double life within myself as a young girl because that's how I coped. And I've known so many people that have died because of this. You cannot use it recreationally.
This is the We're Out of Time podcast. Sitting to my right, the man who revolutionized addiction recovery and treatment, Richard Taite. I'm Jason LaChance, a certified addiction recovery coach, and our guest, the lovely Jenny Leone. Good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you too.
So I've known you for a few years, but we've never really talked our journey. Like, I don't even know your addiction story or anything. We've just talked like support.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know about you, Richard. I'm always curious because childhood. I mean, it frames so much. So I'm curious about what you were like as a little kid, some of the circumstances, home life.
Yeah, and that's where it all started for me. You know, I always say like the root of addiction comes from trauma. And that was my story. You know, I was raised in Vancouver, Canada, and normal family on the outside, right? Little town, and lived right off the forest, and mom, dad, you know, they were still together, and seemed like the perfect life. You know, I was in sports, you know, I did the right thing, but there was a major secret behind closed doors. And that was that I was being sexually abused by my older brother my whole entire childhood.
Real brother?
Yeah, real brother, under the same roof. So this went on from as far back as I can remember. And then before then, like babysitters came forward. One of my cousins came forward with like inappropriate and touching, like way back to like 2 or 3 years old. And so that went on until I was 12, until I finally came forward. And as you can imagine, it's just like the biggest, can I swear on here? It's okay. Like the biggest mind ever, right? Because at such a young age, you're learning, you know, what feelings are, what love is, what trust is, what support is, all these things. And the people you should be feeling it the most from is your family, you know, your parents and that trust. And so it was all twisted up in my head. It was like I was somewhat detached from reality. I had these like different characters I played in this like double life within myself as a young girl because that's how I coped, you know? It just became like the way that my life was. And I was so brainwashed in it at the time because, you know, it got to the point where he had me thinking like if I ever told, then something would happen to my parents.
This is your brother?
Yeah, this is my brother. Something would happen to them. And so it just like became this total mind. And so
how much older was your brother than you?
He was only like 5 years older. So something was happening to him, obviously, which is what I've come to like think about and learn.
Did you figure that out? Was he sexually abused too?
That's never come out that it's the truth. I just, in my mind, unless he's just completely evil, have to believe that somebody did something to him.
Do you speak to him today?
No, I don't. So when I was 12, I finally came forward. I told my best girlfriend that I grew up with, and I told her, and she was like, you got to tell your parents. And so I sat them down. I told them, my dad, like gnarly Italian, you know, so he didn't want to believe it. You know, he was the son, the apple of his eye, you know, and I was like this troubled kid for obvious reasons, right? And so they didn't want to believe it. And so, you know, I've held it in for all those years, right? And I finally come forward and I finally say something and I'm not believed. So what did I do? I just like closed down, you know?
Your father didn't believe you?
They didn't believe me.
Your mother didn't believe
They didn't believe me.
And it kept happening.
Well, then I, you know, told my best friend and she was like, that you need to go to the police.
Good.
And so I remember one night, I just turned 13, I think at this time, and I ran. I remember it was like dark, raining, and I ran all the way in this little town to the police station. And I sat down with the police and I said, I have to tell you what's been happening. And I told them. And so they went, he got arrested. They took me in for a bunch of exams and things like that, which it was proven without a doubt these things had been happening. Obviously, we don't need to go
Clearly.
into detail, but and then my parents were actually questioned because there was, and this was never proved, but there was a lot of talk like maybe they just turned a blind eye, or were they involved and this and that, which I don't like to go there. I've done a lot of work on myself and I don't like to go there, but there's still always those little questions in the back of my head, like, how didn't they know?
Do you talk to your parents?
So my dad has passed, but
Did you have a relationship with your dad before he passed?
So I despised my father, despised him because of all of this, right? Because he disowned me. He was like, I'm disowning you. When I went to the police. He
disowned you for being raped.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's out of the picture.
And so I didn't have a relationship with him. And then it's interesting because now that he's passed and now that I've been sober for quite some time, I understand he had his own addictions. He was a sex addict for sure because of the things he was doing to my mom.
I don't even have any ear for this. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't. No. Let's stop. Okay. This is bullshit. Okay. I don't give a what he was doing.
Oh, it didn't justify it. It didn't justify it.
You're not going to ever put this on you.
Oh, no, that.
Okay.
Ever. No. I just have a better understanding of how sick he was, right?
Right.
And so my mom...
Which doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but, through the work I've done...
It doesn't even need to be said. I'm the father of a daughter. It doesn't even need to be said. It doesn't matter what his issue was.
Yeah.
His little girl came up to him and told him something, and he, instead of dealing with it, his way of dealing with it was to disown you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Which was completely... And so, that just obviously just threw me into a life of addiction immediately because...
What about your mother?
My mom was always the peacekeeper of the family. And so...
I interrupted you when you were talking about your father.
Her father. Yeah, my father. Hey.
Do you remember where you were?
Yeah. I was talking that, he's a sex addict. And so my mom stayed with him through all that. Just to give you an idea, my dad was 30. My mom was 14. She was hitchhiking. He was a married man with a son, a stepson of mine. And he picked her up and they'd been together ever since kind of thing. So it just kind of shows you, the type of person my mom was. So my mom, just wanted to just make everything okay. It wasn't okay, but she was the only person left in my life, so I forgave her,
She's still alive.
She's still alive.
You have a relationship.
And I have a very strong relationship with her today. We've been through a lot.
She's sorry.
She is unbelievably sorry. And if she could go back and change things, she would. She's tormented by it, so.
I'm tormented by it.
Yeah. So, so at that point, here I am. I'm now 13 and, this has come out. I'm being disowned. I have a boyfriend that's 18 and, he's this drug dealer and I go with him and I'm living in and out of houses and stuff that he has that are grow operations in Vancouver because that's what everyone did back then. And, it was just that because they didn't want to kick him out of the house. And so, cause he went away for just a little bit, but then he got out. And it was a thing where they would let him come back around. And obviously I wasn't okay with any of that. So I was completely numbing myself. I was a lot of psychedelics back then, smoking a lot of weed, drinking all the time, just anything I could to numb myself. Of course I was put in a lot of therapy, but I was a rebellious teenager now that didn't want to think about and talk about my feelings. I was the world, I can't trust anybody. I can't everything is just a mess. And so that went on through my teen years. And then at 18, he got off probation. When I was 18, my brother.
Your brother.
He got off probation.
Was he in jail?
For a short period of time.
How long?
I don't even remember. It was a short period of time.
He went to jail.
He was, it was juvie. So he was, I was 14, 17.
That's why.
Yeah. And so he started coming back around and I saw him one time and we crossed paths at my parents' house and they shouldn't have, I would always say to them, just don't let him come here when I'm here. Just don't that's all I'll ask, and they just could not make that happen. So we ran into each other and I was obviously very mean, cause I was like, you. And I'll never forget it. He just looked at me and he was like, what the do you want, Jen? You want me to just get down on my hands and knees and beg for your forgiveness? And I was like, I don't even want that. And I've never seen him or spoke to him since. And at that point,
where did he go at 17?
Where did he go? They put him up in an apartment. Yeah. They put him up in an apartment. So then I started looking for ways to leave the country. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I got to completely start my life over. I can't stay here. I'm going to kill him, or one of my boyfriends is going to kill him, for real. And so I started modeling and acting at a young age. And then I started booking stuff down here in California. And so at 19, I had booked a job called Battle Dome, which was like American Gladiators. Yeah, with Sony. And I left and I never went back. I left with a suitcase in my hand, $3,000 worth of traveler's checks, came down here, married an American, twice my age, who was a celebrity photographer, just into a horrible next bad decision, right? And I was just off and running now in Hollywood.
How old were you when you got married?
19. To this American. He was 49, 45. His name was Scott Delamo. He's the celebrity photographer.
That turned out to be a good deal for you. I mean,
very temporarily.
At the time,
sure.
Very
it
temporarily.
felt like going from the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah.
But you got your citizenship.
Well, this is what happened. So I marry this guy thinking that I'm going to be able to just do it for a green card and whatever. And I'm legal now, so I can say whatever I want to say. But he turned out to be a complete psycho.
Sure.
Obviously, because why wouldn't he? Because those were the days I picked. 40.
She was
49. He was
19.
49 and 19? Oh, shit. It's only 30 years difference. So why are you whining about it?
Yeah. So all bad, right? And
All
so
bad.
he just, as soon as we were married, it was like I was his possession.
Of course.
And so I ended up having to fly my mom down from Canada to help me escape from him. This is, people half the time don't believe me. And I'm like, here, let me pull up this bin of stuff and you can, because it's so insane. It's like a movie, right? Yeah. And so he just got completely just possessive of me. I had to run. So he went away on a business trip for his photography. I flew my mom down, got me out of the house, and I was living in and out of hotels for 6 months. And he was trying to track me down. And I had an attorney, I had my immigration attorney and then a regular attorney. I filed a restraining order. I got granted a permanent 5-year restraining order against this guy. And this guy was so crazy that my lawyer went over there and he literally had a shrine set up for me and he had a gun. He's like, I'm going to find her. I'm going to kill her. And so I was trying to get away from this guy forever. And then finally I got away from him. It took a long time, but he kept reporting me to immigration. And he was making up these crazy tales that I was trafficking humans, all trafficking drugs. I had the FBI show up at my door when I was living in Venice. And they thought he had told them that I was affiliated with Jesse James Hollywood, right? You remember that guy back in the day?
Nope.
Serial killer guy, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not up on my serial killers.
He was this real famous guy out here, whatever. Yeah. And anyways, I had no affiliation with any of these people. And so he was just doing chaotic stuff. It was just crazy. But that's just what I started doing. I would go from one crazy situation to the next because all I'd known my whole life was chaos.
That was without question one of the worst things I've ever heard. And not the worst, but certainly in the top 1%. And I'm so sorry for you.
Thank you.
How old are you now?
45.
45? Look good.
I'm 45 too, so it helps.
Nice.
There you go.
Oh, you look good for 45. You did it. And I can see how people would go insane.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Okay.
Yeah. So I was
You've
just
had a bad run.
Yeah.
So
and it continued because of the choices I made. And that's why I tell this story to hopefully, help other people because
give me the rest of it.
Yeah.
Well, let me stop you.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people to understand. You say, the choices you made, you're taking onus of it now.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're in that, as you may or may not know, I underwent sexual abuse too at 5 years old. So when we get in that, like subconscious is taken over.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, how do people probably like, goodness, how do you go from one shitty relationship and interaction to another? It's like, we're not even conscious of it.
Yeah.
This becomes what we know as our baseline of normity.
Absolutely. And anything healthy is like, what do you want? Whoa, I don't want that.
Can't trust that.
Something wrong with you. You know, I couldn't trust people that were nice to me, but I thought I could trust people that treated me poorly.
Do you still have a little bit of that?
I don't. No. I've done a lot of work on myself, a lot of work, but I was that way for many, many years. And so for me, I was so like over-sexualized and just in this like chaotic world that my decisions...
Can I just stop you there? You were over-sexualized because you were with guys, okay, that were 30 years older than you.
Yeah.
Okay. You were over-sexualized because you were raped.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
You were over-sexualized, not because you had a healthy sexuality.
No.
Because you were a victim.
Exactly. I didn't choose that, you know, but that's what I became for a while. And so, you know, I was modeling, I was acting, I was doing the whole thing. I was like booking like mainstream shows and movies. And I probably could have made it if I had like kept going, you know, but money talks. And, you know, I started being offered other things like Playboy or Penthouse or Hustler. And so I was a huge model like back in the day.
Did you do Playboy?
Yeah, I did all those things.
Oh, that's great.
And so, but it led down a very dark path because it went from like shooting magazine covers. Like one time I was on like 17 covers. I remember looking at Down and Venture and they got like that huge newsstand. And I was like, wow, I'm on like every cover right now, humanly possible. I had my AKA, that's who I was. And it just, because I was used to living this lifestyle, it seemed very normal for me to just take off my clothes and do this stuff.
Right.
Not realizing like that's not normal. And I used to think,
did you go into porn?
Well, this is what happened. So, you know, I went from just...
Can we get to the good stuff already?
We're going to get to the good stuff. Yeah, we're going to get to the good stuff. That's exactly where it led, you know? And so Jenna Jameson was like one of my best friends back then. And so she had called me out to her house and she had signed a contract with Playboy to start Club Jenna, which is like, you know, a talent group of girls all under contract, right? It was a label called Club Jenna.
Like a Vivid,
but better. But I was the only girl that was ever contracted as just girl. And so that was my deal. I just was like the only girl star out there. And that's why I blew up so huge in a short period of time. So, but yeah, so, you know, here I am in this lifestyle. I'm running around Hollywood. I'm making ridiculous money. You know, I'm under contract and just making horrible decisions. And all the while, totally in my addiction. Like nobody knew either. Like everybody did stuff, but I didn't hang out with like heroin addicts and meth. People like I had a house, I had nice cars, I had nice things, you know, but here I am, no matter what, like popping on average, like 50 pills a day. Like it was Xanax, Oxys or Norco, Adderall, you know, and that was like my cocktail. And I would just do it up all day long. And it's funny because when you're shooting scenes, you know, you sign these waivers, like you're in sound, body, and mind. Well, I never was in sound, body, and mind. Now, when I look back at my stuff, I'm like, holy shit, you know, like you can just tell just by looking at me. But anyways, yeah. So I ran in that lifestyle for like 10, 15 years in my addiction doing that.
Tell me about the porn.
Yeah. So, you know, I was contracted like 7 features a year. I was up for awards, things like that.
AVN.
Yeah. And I would like go on set and, it was like, when I look back on it now, because I'm so like far away from that, it was just like these out of body experiences for me, you know, like.
Okay, let's move along. Okay.
Yeah. There's no sense of reality because you get into this world that's like, everything's just okay. You know, it's like, it's a sick, twisted place. So
it is.
Yeah. I was on the cover of AVN and I used to shoot with them all the time, but it was nuts. And so that
was your porn name? No, I'm not going to watch it.
Jessie Capelli.
Jessie
Capelli.
Look up Jessie. I'm just. All right.
I think it's important too what you shared there about the disassociation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I've often, you know, like underwent what I did. My father struggled with sex addiction, was heavily sexually abused, raped, molested, all that. And pornography was prevalent in my home. And that was the thing that I had to deal with.
Yeah.
And so I've always been very curious about that disassociation because I've heard others who have left the industry, turned their life around in a way.
Yeah.
So the disassociation, like how in reflection, like looking at that, because for the normal person hearing, oh, I worked with so-and-so.
Yeah.
Like it's not a normal working activity. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting that you coupled that with the disassociation.
Yeah.
That awareness.
Yeah. You know, and just being on a lot of drugs just makes it easy to do that. You know what I mean? And the hardest thing, the biggest mindfuck was trying to quit. Because that is an addiction all in itself, that lifestyle, the money, you know, all of it. And Jessie Capelli was who I was. It's the only person I was out here in California for the most part, right? And so when I wanted to walk away, and the reason I wanted to walk away was because in 2007, I was raped by one of the top Playboy executives. And this happened in Las Vegas. It was at AVN. I made the mistake. I always had a bodyguard with me with Club Jenna. And I made the mistake of going up to the room with this guy. He was going to call me my car. And we were all gambling down below at the Hard Rock. And we went up there and I went to use the bathroom. He said, I'll call you your car. And when I came back out, my bodyguard was gone. And he looked at me and he was like, now you're going to get it. And then that went on for 3.5 hours. And his name is Jay Gardena and he can himself. So that happens. And I went to the emergency room. I went to the emergency room, right? They did like the whole rape kit. Here's the craziest part. When you're a porn star drug addict, okay?
It's your fault.
I had pills, right? Narcotics in my system, alcohol in my system. I have a couple feature films that are like Jesse Likes Pain or whatever. Here he is, this big executive. And so he was like, this was consensual. Like, she likes this and she's on drugs. Like, and he had done this to so many women. So I retained Gloria Allred and her team and I sued Playboy. And
how did it go?
It didn't go well because first of all, I'm not sober, right? And it went on for like 2 years of mediating and all sorts of stuff. And I was literally losing my mind. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in Gloria Allred's office and I was talking about it and I had no emotion. Like I have a really hard time still to this day, like crying or showing emotion just because of my life. And she was like, you need to like show this more, what you went through. Like it's a hard sell because you're just like stoic. And like, that's how I've survived, you know? And so I ended up walking away from it after like 2 years because I was literally going to kill myself. Like it was the most god awful experience, but that got me out of it. And then I kept like going back little by little. And that's where the tattoos come into play because while under contract, you can't get tattoos, things like that. You know, you got to look a certain way. And I thought, okay, well, if I just start like blasting myself with tattoos,
they're going to throw you out.
They won't hire me. And one of the deals was they kept me on contract and kept paying me for like 4 more years after that all happened. So it was like a good amount of money. But I didn't have to do anything. It was like, we're sorry kind of thing, you know? And so I just started getting like blasted, but then I started getting hired for like Inked magazine and like different things. I'm like, hey. And so this was like on Xanax. And I guess I don't remember any of this, but I guess I had a wad of cash, walked into like tattoo shop after tattoo shop. They were saying no, finally said, yeah, we'll do it. And I guess it was like, this is a Buddhist Om and anarchy. And I guess I was like, I want the good and bad because that's my life. Yeah. You know? And I woke up the next morning and I thought somebody had literally like drawn on my hands, you know, just for that first second, I was like, holy shit, I tattooed my hands. But yeah, so
I've never seen that before. Have you?
Tattooed hands? Yeah.
I mean, it's rare,
the palms.
especially on a girl. It's pretty rare.
But on a girl, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really hard to get out of it, but I eventually did.
You're not ever going to do the facial tattoos, are you?
No, I'm done. Yeah. If I could take it back, I would take back a lot of them.
Oh, no way. This is so cool.
I don't like the stars. I think it looks pretty ghetto.
Let me see the stars.
Little things, just stupid mistakes. Like the sleeves are nice and stuff, but
the sleeves are good.
But yeah, when I got out, it was so crazy. And this is what I like to help people with. It's like all I knew was Jessie Capelli in that life. And here I am now trying to go into a totally different life, Jessie Capelli. And now I'm trying to like become a normal member of society And it's like, who the f- am I? And then when you get sober, you're like, okay, now I'm not this person. I'm sober. Who the f- am I? What am I going to do with my life? And that experience of like humbling yourself when you don't get out of bed unless you're making a certain amount of money, to humbling yourself to become a normal member of society was one of the hardest things I ever did. And it was
I can imagine, because you're going from Canada down here at 19. You never had any traditional source of income.
No, I'd never worked a normal job.
Yeah.
Never. Like, it was just, that was my life. And so while I was in treatment, I just had this epiphany. This is what you need to do. If there's any value, any reason for your life that all this has happened to you, you need to like help people. And so I enrolled in school and went through like drug and alcohol studies and became an intern 9 months later.
An intern for what?
To be a case manager at a treatment center.
Okay.
Like 9 years ago almost. And,
like a KDAC?
yeah. But I was just an intern. So at first I was making nothing.
Right.
And then I was making $16 an hour.
Okay. That sucks.
Yeah. But that's where it started. And I worked my way up the ladder and humbled myself.
And then where'd you go to work?
And then I just worked at a few different centers doing case management. And then I realized like, that's not my jam. It's not for me. So I got into the business side of it, and started doing that, just building relationships, everything you've seen me do. Built a podcast that was very successful for a treatment center for several years. Launched my own podcast.
You still have a podcast?
It's on a hiatus right now just because of the treatment center. Trying to focus on that.
Got it. Let's talk about that, because you went from a horrible situation and essentially a train wreck.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you have your own treatment center.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it's completely different than Carrera, right? Carrera is where all celebrities go to treatment. It's got a world-class spa in the center. It's got the best cuisine. It's got everything.
Yeah.
It's one of one. You can even bring your dog. Okay. Talk to me about your center and who the people are that you cater to and the city that you're in. So that way, when people call the show or they reach out to me and they live in your area, we can refer them.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's in South Orange County, so Mission Viejo, about 15, 20 minutes off the beach. People that come to my center are just everyday people that are trying to get their lives back on track. It could be, a husband that has lost everything due to his drinking and his wife has given him an ultimatum and he went to detox. And
that's the heat off. I got to stop you for a second.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. There's really only two types of people that come to treatment. I'm not talking about the 65-year-old who gets into a car accident, back problem, he's on opiates for 30 days and then he needs a 2-week detox. I'm not talking about that guy. Okay. I'm talking about, there's only two buckets really. People that want to get well and the people that want to get the heat off.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's the 18 to 25s, like failure to launch and those, their parents or whatever. Or, you see the ones that have been to like 30 treatment centers.
You need to explain that to the
18 to 25-year-olds.
The failure to
launch. These are kids pretty much like how I would have been probably if I went to treatment back at that age, that have had like really bad childhoods. They haven't launched in their life. Like they haven't matured. They haven't taken on any responsibility. They've gotten in a lot of trouble at a young age. Maybe they've been going to juvie. They've dropped out of school. They're getting into petty crime. They're experimenting with drugs. Their parents are mad at them. They've kicked them out. They're living on the street. Maybe like they're not launching off in that life.
Will you? That was all. You do have a podcast.
I was just yeah.
All right.
But that's who they are. You know what I mean? And they come in and it's funny watching them come in because that criteria, they'll come in and they like have a tantrum for like 2 weeks. They're pissed. They're having tantrums. They don't, you're like, I don't want to eat this. And I'm like, you were just shooting freaking dope out of the bathroom toilet. And now you don't want to eat a Pop-Tart, They're like, I need organic this, I need that. I'm just like, seriously, you guys, like, let's bring it down a few notches, but that's who they are. And then after those couple of weeks, they, chill out a little bit and they realize I'm there to help them. And
are you at the center working?
I am. Yeah.
What do you do there?
I do the admissions. I do business development. I do all the marketing. I do all the back end stuff. I'm HR. I lead the operations team. I have a clinical director now, so he leads the clinical team. I run groups sometimes. I step in, I'm in the trenches. I like being in the trenches. Like that's where I feel the passion and purpose. Like I tell everybody, it's one thing to get sober. That's great, right? But unless you like truly find your passion and purpose and what like sets your soul on fire, you're going to be freaking miserable.
Oh, no.
You have to find
it's worse than that.
You're going to die.
You cannot stay sober unless you replace what you held as most valuable with something of equal or greater value.
Exactly.
That is a given.
Yep.
And when you tell people that in the industry, they look at you all side-eyed.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, okay, I get it. You can't help anybody. Next.
Yeah, but it's the truth.
Of course it's the truth.
People don't want to hear that.
I think you said the word too in there that matters most. Get your take on this when people ask me, I don't know what my purpose is if I'm at Celebrate Recovery or whatever else it is. And I go, well, you can't find it till you know what you value.
Exactly.
What did you value before? What do you value now?
Yeah, exactly.
And when you talk to people like that, they don't even know what the hell you're talking about. Neurally sobriety. So you have to say something like, you have to replace the word value with, well, what do you love?
Yeah.
What do you care about?
True. Good point.
I was so fried when I first got sober from the Xanax. I was doing 17 milligrams a day, which is just insane. I'd have a girl that would come read out of the big book, once a week to me. And we would have to highlight and I have to read it out loud line by line. And I could just get through a few lines and that would be it, because it was just so bad.
What was the detox like?
It was insane. I thought I was going to die. It was the most horrific thing I've ever experienced because when you've taken Xanax for like 15 years and because I started at like 0.5, right? And then I'm up to that. It's in every cellular tissue, muscle, everything. And I had this like ringing, this like, when the TV goes like back in the day, that was my brain for like 6 months.
Right.
And this
the cloud will not lift.
It was insane.
You can't even speak.
It was insane. I was like mush, but eventually I came out of it. But I have gaps like years at a time where I'm what happened? Like foggy.
And then you think it happened, but you're not certain it happened. And then, you think of it and it just keeps popping back in your head, these things. And you're not certain whether or not they happened or not.
Yeah.
I have to call my friends and say, is this a thing?
Yeah.
Did this happen? I mean, to this day, I still call my friends and they go, remember when ... And I go, no, tell me. And I still call my friends for stories about me.
Well, that's why I keep a lot of like records of stuff, because I'm like, I knew I was right. There's certain things that I remember without a doubt. There's also a lot of stuff from my childhood just to protect myself. I blocked it out of my memory, but there's certain events I definitely remember, but there's a lot of fog in there too.
Of course. Well, and I think it's important to share too, like you said, it was like a good 6 months for you. I mean, and I think that's a thing that people just so don't understand, especially sometimes the families of a loved one going through it. Like, they had 28 days. Why aren't they back at school, getting their master's degree or conquering the world? Like,
takes a good year.
Yeah. How long, not only to get that out of your system, out of your tissue, but let alone for this to come back, our minds to come back, our chemicals to start firing normal. Like, good luck getting your dopamine and your endorphins and your serotonin.
Are like backfiring all day long.
Yeah.
You can't explain this stuff to people that haven't gone through it. I mean, you've got your own center now and you get people in the door. I mean, how many times are you talking to these parents, talking about their kids, and you just look at it and go, problem's you.
Yeah, exactly. Almost all the time.
Almost all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And
literally, yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre, man. It's like, hey, dude, you caused this. Okay. You break it, you fix it. Okay. This is how you do it.
Yeah.
Right. And they just, man, people are so out of their minds. What I want to talk about is the fentanyl crisis because it's killing everybody.
Yeah, it is.
And I want to know what your experience with that is. And if you know anybody.
Oh yeah. This is a hot topic for me. I've had several people pass. I mean, at least one person every few weeks to a month. Like the way I like to look at it is, 300 people a day die from what we like to call fentanyl poisoning now, because this is poisoning. And you imagine a plane going down every day. It would be a huge thing that the government people would be, dealing with, and they're not. And like I say, you cannot use drugs recreationally anymore. How it was back in the day, it is not like that anymore. The housewife that's going out with her girlfriends on a Friday night to have a glass of wine and go to the bar and take someone's Xanax to, feel a little loosey-goosey, whatever. You can't do that anymore.
Well, if you get it
straight from the pharmacy, but right. A lot of people don't do that. And I've known so many people that have died because of this. You cannot use it recreationally unless it's right from your pharmacy.
Do you know what the problem with that is? And we had somebody on the other day telling me this. You weren't here. He was like, no, I never get it on the street. I said, but you just said you got a pill from your friend. Oh, yeah, but she didn't get it on the street. Right. How do you know?
Yeah, exactly.
This is your life.
Yeah. It's Russian roulette. And sooner or later, it's going to come knocking at your door.
That's right.
Whether it's you or a loved one, it's affecting all of us. I see it all the time. And I'm like enraged by it. It's a weapon of mass destruction.
Their families will never be the same.
Never be the same. One of my girlfriends just lost her 14-year-old daughter.
Shut up.
And I
have a 15-year-old daughter.
I have the text messages. The girl, I was texting her for months trying to help her. And the messages are just so heartbreaking because she's like, Jenny, I've got 3 days. I'm doing so good. She wanted it so bad. And she died in her room and her mom found her. They just had her memorial this last weekend. She was 14 years old. So those ones
I can't stand her parents. I just can't stand her parents. How do you have a 14-year-old girl, Jason? How do you have it and not know what this kid's doing and be so preoccupied, so narcissistic, so self-involved that you don't know what your 14-year-old daughter's doing?
You got to be up in their business. They aren't your friends. They're your kids.
I don't talk about my son much because out of respect for him, he likes to be kept out of things. But I have a 16-year-old son, and he's grown up with me through all of this, and so he, thank God, knows the dangers out there, and
do you live with him?
He lives with me full time. Yeah.
Not his father.
No, that's my ex-husband. We never talked about him, but that's a whole other show.
Right, lady. This has been awesome. Yeah. See, I'm not swearing anymore.
Easiest way people want to find you, connect with you, Instagram?
Yep. You can go to Jenny's Sober Lifestyle, or I can throw out my number as well. It's 949-774. It's a number just for this.
Oh, God.
Yeah. 949-774-5185.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
This
Appreciate
was
it.
Beautiful talk. And I loved your vulnerability. I think it's going to help a lot of people, and it's going to get rid of the shame, because there are a lot of women that have gone through what you've gone through, and they think it's a bad deal.
Yeah.
Do me a favor, will you?
Yeah.
Look in that camera and say, see you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
We're out of time. Please subscribe on YouTube, click the thumbs up, and leave a comment. Please subscribe on Apple Podcast and Spotify and leave a rating and a review. And share the We're Out of Time podcast with others you know who will get value out of it. See you next Tuesday.